Tonight in Washington, D.C., in a dramatic and unprecedented escalation of political pressure, a growing number of U.S. senators are calling for President Donald J. Trump's immediate resignation, shaking the very foundations of American governance and igniting a firestorm across Capitol Hill, Main Street, and the global stage. What began as whispers has now erupted into a full-blown clash between branches of government, between parties, and between visions of the future of the Republic. The story begins today in the August marble halls of the United States Senate, where lawmakers gathered for routine hearings, but what emerged was anything but routine. What began as concern over one of Trump's cabinet officials quickly morphed into a tidal wave of outrage, not just directed at a member of Trump's inner circle, but at the president himself. In testimony that stunned lawmakers in the nation, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, a longtime Trump ally, acknowledged he had visited the private Caribbean island of the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in 2012 and had additional previously undisclosed contacts, contradicting earlier public statements that he had severed ties long ago. These revelations, drawn from recently released Justice Department files, sparked an immediate bipartisan backlash in Congress as senators and representatives alike questioned not only Lutnick's fitness for office, but the judgment and leadership of the president who appointed him. As the news spread, the Senate floor erupted with rare and fiery speeches. Senators from both sides of the aisle, including those once loyal to the president, described deep concerns about the integrity of the executive branch and the ethical cloud now hanging over the White House. One of the first to break from the administration's defense was Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada, who publicly declared that Lutnick must resign immediately, a call that echoed through committee rooms and corridors. She framed the moment not as a partisan spat, but as a crisis of public trust, arguing that American citizens deserve leaders whose actions withstand scrutiny and whose past do not raise the darkest of questions. The intensity only increased as Senate Democrats seized the moment to challenge President Trump directly, arguing that this scandal is symptomatic of deeper issues plaguing his administration. For weeks, critics have raised alarms about Trump's approach to governance, suggesting that ethical lapses, aggressive political tactics, and bold unilateral actions have eroded norms and strained the checks and balances that define American democracy. Commentators and constitutional scholars have pointed to actions such as expanding executive power, public feuds with lawmakers, and confrontations with the judiciary as signs of a presidency at odds with democratic tradition. In this charged atmosphere, a chorus of voices in the Senate began to escalate their language. What started as calls for Lutnick's resignation quickly evolved into demands that Trump himself step down for the good of the nation. Some senators described the situation in stark terms, painting a picture of a country at a crossroads and a presidency increasingly mired in controversy and contradiction. They warned that continuing down the current path risks deepening political polarization and weakening the legitimacy of American institutions. Not all senators have joined the call for resignation, of course. In fact, many in the Republican majority have stood by the president, dismissing these rumblings as political theater designed to score points rather than serious governance. They argue that challenges to Trump's leadership are simply the latest chapter in a long history of partisan conflict and insist that voters, not lawmakers, should determine his fate at the ballot box. But even within the GOP ranks, fissures are forming. Some Republican lawmakers have privately expressed discomfort with the administration's direction and public confrontations with congressional authority, signaling that Trump's broad base of support in the Senate may not be as immovable as once thought. Across the nation, Americans are reacting with a mix of shock, anger, and debate. In coffee shops, living rooms, and social media platforms, citizens grapple with what it means for the health of their democracy when leaders from the executive branch, the legislative branch, and beyond face such intense internal opposition. Political analysts note that we are witnessing a moment not just of scandal, but of national self-examination, a reckoning over accountability, leadership, and the fundamental expectations Americans hold for their leaders. To understand why this moment is so seismic, one must look back at the complex history between Donald Trump and the U.S. Senate. During his first term in office, Trump faced fierce opposition over impeachment proceedings, foreign policy controversies, and deeply divisive rhetoric. At times, Republican senators were the bulwark that prevented his removal, even as a handful broke ranks and criticized his conduct, laying bare the tensions that have long simmered within the GOP. Now, in his second term, those tensions have resurfaced in unexpected ways. The Epstein-related disclosures regarding a trusted ally have served as a catalyst, exposing fault lines that had been building beneath the surface. Critics argue that Trump's pattern of surrounding himself with controversial figures has once again put the presidency in jeopardy, while supporters maintain that the attacks are politically driven and lack substantive grounding. Amid this firestorm, Senate corridors have been buzzing with negotiations, strategizing, and back-channel communications. Lawmakers concerned about constitutional implications caution that resignation is a drastic step, one that should not be taken lightly, even in the face of controversy. They point to mechanisms such as impeachment or the 25th Amendment as constitutionally prescribed avenues for addressing presidential fitness, arguing that invoking such tools requires significant consensus and clear evidence of incapacity. Yet others contend that waiting for protracted legal or legislative processes would only deepen the crisis of confidence engulfing the nation. These voices call for decisive action now, asserting that prolonging uncertainty undermines faith in government and distracts from urgent policy issues. From economic challenges and international tensions to public health and national security, international observers, too, are watching closely. Allies and competitors alike are interpreting the spectacle unfolding on Pennsylvania Avenue as a testament to American democracy's resilience or fragility. Diplomatic circles note that leadership instability in the world's most powerful nation has ripple effects far beyond U.S. borders, influencing global markets, strategic alliances, and geopolitical tensions. Back in Washington, the Senate debate shows no sign of cooling. Floor speeches have become impassioned pleas, historical references, and stark warnings about the future. Some senators invoke the Founding Fathers' intentions for a republic grounded in balanced powers and moral leadership. Others draw on contemporary concerns about political polarization, media influence, and the erosion of civil discourse. At the same time, the Trump administration has mounted a vigorous defense. White House spokespeople have reiterated their support for Lutnick and have dismissed calls for resignation as partisan overreach. They emphasize the president's accomplishments, argue that scandals are being inflated, and accuse opponents of weaponizing ethics concerns for political gain. This combative stance further deepens the partisan divide and fuels the national conversation about accountability and presidential power. As evening settles over the Capitol, reporters and analysts speculated about what comes next. Will the pressure intensify? Will more senators join the chorus calling for Trump to resign? Or will the president weather this storm as he has others before it? What is certain is that this moment marks a pivotal chapter in American political history, one that will be studied and debated for years to come. In closing, this unfolding story is far more than a headline. It is a portrait of a nation grappling with its principles, confronted by contentious leadership and urgent calls for accountability at the highest levels of power. From the Senate floor to citizens' living rooms, the question on everyone's mind is the same. What does it mean for the future of the United States when its leaders stand divided? And what will history remember about this moment of crisis?